right. Welcome to Roundtable Marketing, the podcast where people who make marketing and people who buy marketing come together. My name is Nick.
And I am Brian.
Let's get started. So last time, of course, we talked about the audience journey.
We
and
did.
Today we're talking about the marketing roadmap. So just to give us a little bit of a refresher, Brian, could you remind me, because I'm so forgetful, what is the audience journey?
Honestly, I'm shocked at how easily you forget these things. But for the sake of you and for the audience, I will go back.
Thank you.
So let's take the big picture here. So your goal as an organization is you're trying to intersect with the important audience that you have out there. And so that's where your communications are going to do. Your communications are going to help you find those connections and actually help you make that relationship, because relationship is supreme. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out who that audience is. Well, how do you do that? Well, you need to at least understand at the very beginning what their journey is. And so understanding that audience journey is going to help you then be able to make the interactions you want to make. So the analogy I like to use is every morning your audience wakes up and they're going to go out their door. And they're going to go on that journey. They're going to go on that journey through time. You want to intersect their journey. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is awareness. They need to understand who the heck you are. And what does that mean? It means you're providing them with information, education, and promotion, and actually getting them to realize who you are, understand your brand, and understand the things you're offering. That jumps into the analysis phase. And the analysis is all about value matching. It's finding that fittedness between your value propositions and the values that they have as an individual. So connecting those two things together, they are going to look at your marketing. They're going to look at your collateral and they're going to say, yes, these people get me. They understand and they're providing something that I would find value in. That jumps into the action step. So they're ready to take the plunge with you. You know, in the ABCs of action, they're either going to apply, it's a job seeker, they're going to buy, meaning they're a potential client or customer, or they're going to comply, meaning it's internal corporate communications, and they're actually going to do the thing you're telling them to do. So they're going to take that action step. When we talk about a call to action, we're talking about this is what's going to happen. They're going to take that action. So then we come out of the action, and then it gets into adoption. This is what you provide. This is the service that your business does. This is the relationship that you keep going on an ongoing basis. This is the way that you service them and take care of them, and you deliver the work. You deliver what was on the other side of that action so that they can then become your stark raving fans and they can advocate for you. They can help other people come back to you, including themselves, because you've made sure that you're relatable, reliable, and referable, and you can be advocated for. And so that's the 5 steps of the audience journey: awareness, analysis, action, adoption, and advocacy. Understanding that piece of the audience journey is one of the clearest and easiest ways to try and figure out who your audience is before you actually begin your marketing process.
Well, that's, I think, key to figuring out your marketing roadmap, because the audience is such a big part of that. We had a conversation outside of the podcast. I know that's not something we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to talk at all outside the podcast to keep this as fresh and informative as possible, but we did. And we talked about some fictional and real-life examples of brands who understood their audience journey and used a marketing roadmap, even though they may not have called it that. We had 2, I think, kind of bad examples in Prestige Worldwide from Step Brothers.
That's a good.
And the hula hoop.
Prestige Worldwide is not a bad example of anything. They are bad at marketing, but I would say
That's fair.
I think they didn't understand their first audience, but they understood their final audience, which was me. And so I connect with Prestige Worldwide. So that's something that's good for me.
I think it's fair to say they were true to themselves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. They were as fake as they could be, which was true to themselves.
We talked about the hula hoop from Hudsucker Proxy, which
Also,
may not be something
terrible. I mean, it's a terrible example because it's you and me, which I've never even seen the movie. I just know about it. So I'm pretty sure you and Tim Robbins are the only people that have actually seen the movie. So but is it a good example? I'm sure. I think the nerds out there probably are like really excited about us speaking about the Hudsucker Proxy, but again, I don't know if those are the best brands to use if we're talking about somebody
Probably
who gets
not.
it. Maybe we should like make one up.
I tell you what, though, I found one I think you might be interested in.
Okay.
And
also a fictional brand. All right, let's go.
it's a fictional brand. Could you give me a guess as to what it might be? I saw it and I thought Brian.
Oh gosh. I mean, I spend a lot of my time reading fantasy novels. So the brands in there are like really, really off. It's like it couldn't be one of those. So I'm thinking,
Well,
like,
this
what
one-
would you see if you saw Brian and thought, I really want Brian? This is what he would be into. Probably something from Black Mirror, which kind of scares me. But yeah, go ahead.
It's not from Black Mirror. It's something that does kind of reach across into reality. Willy Wonka's Golden Ticket campaign.
Oh my gosh! For those just tuning in, Nick knows a fact about me, which is my favorite movie is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, starring Gene Wilder, of course, not Johnny Depp's, which is not even called that. So I'm in. Let's go. I love this. Yes.
Okay, so talk to me about Willy Wonka because we've already covered the audience journey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, hold on, because now Charlie Bucket, okay, he's a kid. He's living his life. He's gonna walk out that door, and his mom with voiceover is gonna sing "Cheer Up, Charlie" as he's walking out the door, trying to reach him. Okay. So awareness. Is he aware of who Willy Wonka is? He's formed awareness. Why? Everyone knows who Willy Wonka is. He's the candy man. And then, so then Charlie's going to go, he's going to want to engage with Willy Wonka. And he hears the story, though, that he was not aware of. There's an opportunity to take a tour of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, one that was closed down. And nobody ever goes in. And nobody ever comes out, right? But he becomes aware that, yes, there's an opportunity to go in. They make a big announcement. So they build that awareness, right? And where are they doing that? They're doing that through public channels and getting out the door, right? So then Charlie says, is this something I want to do? Of course. He loves Willy Wonka. So he's going to do the analysis, but he's also going to like understand like what it would take. And he's going to go, you know what? I really can't even do this. I wouldn't even be able to do this, but I'm going to try, right? And so what does he do? His grandparents, they buy him the chocolate, right? He tries to take that step of action with that purchase and then makes through, but it doesn't happen. He doesn't even take the step of action he really wanted to take, right? You know, because what are the chances that Charlie Bucket would find the last golden ticket?
And let me just call out, like, what an authentic connection to the audience when Charlie's grandparents, even though they're all stuck in the same bed, they knew that he would respond to this, and this is something he'd be interested in.
They understood it. Now, saying stuck in the same bed, as we saw with Grandpa Joe, is, I mean, was he really stuck? Because he seemed fine after that. But I'll just assume that it was the magic of the Willy Wonka bar, not him being a lazy good-for-nothing while everyone worked for him. But so what happens? Well, he takes that step of action, but it doesn't work. But then he's walking and he sees the golden coin in the sewer. He pulls it out. He buys that bar of chocolate. And what happens? He then now wins. He's got the golden ticket, right? So the adoption process, this is a smooth process. It's easy to adopt when Willy Wonka's delivering on the service of giving a simple factory tour. And it seems like as they go through that, it's the delivery process is so good that, spoiler alert, sorry guys, at the end, Charlie is now made the actual runner of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory as a child.
This is an extraordinary example.
To advocate for Willy Wonka has now been, the delivery process was so good of the tour that now Charlie Buckets can now actually advocate as Willy Wonka. So his audience journey was great. And so now he'll be actually bringing lots more children in to suffer a similar fate as him. So it'll be great. But that would be the audience journey of Charlie Bucket. And I think that it's the perfect audience journey to use.
Talk about connecting with your ideal audience and then maybe, you know, losing some members of that audience that weren't quite a good fit.
First of all, if you read the book, they all come back at the end.
Okay.
The movie doesn't show them coming back, but they do come back. I like to believe they all made it, but I also like the question of whether or not they did. I think a good cautionary tale for children is necessary, and I think that we've lost it in this day and age. We only have heroes. We need some kids that get sucked into a chocolate tube. Because you got to see that happen to know that that's gross that he was drinking out of there. That's contaminating the chocolate river. But I digress. Right. I mean, it is a great film, masterpiece. But back to our world. Let's get to, I'm advocating for it even. They did such a good job with that film. Here I am, right? But let's understand. So the marketing roadmap. So we now have, we don't even have to say a brand. I mean, Wonka as a brand, of course. But Wonka as the man. He's going to wake up in the morning, probably hanging upside down from some sort of like bat-like structure. Who knows? It's got to be something very weird. And then he's, after being cared for by the Oompa Loompas, he's then going to walk out his door on a marketing journey. Now, I don't mean when he walks out the door and does the flip. I know too many details about this movie. You may have picked the worst example, but he's going to walk out his door metaphorically and start his marketing roadmap. So what would be the target marketing roadmap for Willy Wonka? Nick, I'm excited to dive in. Let's do this. This is great.
So I have some real life examples of brands too, just so that we don't get too stuck in the Wonkaverse, stuck in fantasy. But I thought of Apple computers. They really exemplify simplicity, elegance. They have a walled garden approach, a cohesive environment. They appeal to people who want their stuff to work. They want it all to work together. And that's how they market. And then Tesla, they appealed to a lot of folks with positive environmental impact, cutting edge technology. They had some lofty goals, something like letting your Tesla be rented out as a cab. But then there are hazards to that too, with the founder, with Elon Musk getting involved in governmental functions, how that might be a potential mismatch with some of their audience and that effect, whether or not that was a good idea for him to do from a Tesla standpoint and from a personal standpoint. So those were some real life examples I thought of, Tesla and Apple.
I have not checked either of the stocks today, but them being two of the largest businesses that have ever been built, period. It's like, well, did they get it? I'm like, well, I mean, they won the game of business. I don't know if they won the game of audience, but they definitely won the game of business because both of those businesses are extremely successful. And both considerations about both Apple and Tesla are around two businesses that have clear brands that people identify with. They're one of two brands. I can only think of a couple more that I know people that have gotten tattooed on their bodies, right? So like that's crazy. And so when you talk about a brand standpoint and you say, well, like, how do we push through that, even that first step? Like, we've got to make people aware of our brand. Both Apple and Tesla are almost ubiquitous around the world. You could ask anybody, as long as you could speak their language, have you ever heard of this brand? And the answer would be yes. So moving people through the awareness factor, I mean, they've done at least that. And then, as you were mentioning too, and both of those brands, because as much as when we're recording this, there's a lot of controversy. Both of these brands have had a ton of controversy for a very long time. They really have.
Right.
And so when we get to the value matching piece of things, you go like, well, yeah, I mean, like, are they providing value above and beyond? And so you as a brand being able to communicate value is really important. But when we take it out of the real world examples and bring it into pure imagination, Wonka, on the other hand, he was a ubiquitous brand in the world, and yet every single person in the world wanted to be a part of what he was doing. And there was naysayers who pretended, but really everyone wanted to be a part of it, right? So his value matching and what he was providing, specifically with the tour, was so high, right? And so for thinking about the way a business can compare themselves is like, should I try and compare myself to a totally fictional, made-up fairy tale of a story? Or should I compare myself to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? I mean, in both situations, I think that a normal business that's listening to this show and listening to what we're talking about probably should not try to live up to either of those ideals because, quite frankly, like, you're not going to be either of them. You're not going to land that. And so when you're considering your journey as a business and understanding who you are as a business, the first thing to do is think about those people you're trying to serve and build a business for them. If you do make it to the top of that, flying elevator, that's great. But in the meantime, your journey up is going to be a good journey because getting to the point in a business where you can actually serve people and take care of people, take care of your audience as your clients, take care of your audience as your teammates and your talent, and just the watching world, actually take care of people around you, you're going to win the race because you're doing the thing that matters, reaching people.
We're going to break down the key elements of the marketing roadmap, but first I want to ask you, what's the alternative to using a marketing roadmap? Is it just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks? And why is that not as good of an approach as taking that marketing roadmap or designing a marketing roadmap for your brand?
Well, I'd say an analogy that makes a lot of sense here is every single family has a budget. Some families have a spreadsheet. So no matter what, you've got money coming in, you've got money going out, and then you got whatever's left, right? That's true of every single tiny economy that is a household, right? So for every single business, though, every single business has a marketing roadmap. Some people have it written down. Some people spent the time thinking it through. Some people actually went through and figured it all out. But every single business has a marketing roadmap. And why do I say that? Well, because for one, you're either not doing any marketing, and so your roadmap is about an inch long and it doesn't leave your house, right? You are doing a ton of marketing, but you're not really thinking of it in a strategic way. You are throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Having a strategic, fully fleshed out approach, you may have it all planned out and everything may not work out the way you planned it, right? That's true of a budget as well. But creating the marketing roadmap helps you to be the most strategic, helps you identify the problems that you're going to have when you're going out into the world and trying to make marketing happen, trying to make business happen. And it's going to help you understand just as much all the things that you need to say no to as it does all the things you need to say yes to. I think that every single business has a marketing roadmap. Many businesses never wrote it down and never thought about it.
Well, we talked obviously last time about the audience journey. As far as the marketing roadmap goes, what do you actually need to know about your audience, and then how do you find that out?
So first and foremost, with an audience, you need to understand who they are. That can be both a one-sentence conversation, and that could be a lifelong pursuit. I consider the audience pursuit and treating audience first as something that we're always doing. But when you're building out your marketing roadmap, there's a couple things you've got to really understand about that audience. So first and foremost, if you're an existing business that's trying to reach customers, the best thing to do would be look back and say, who are we currently working with? Which of those do we actually like working with? Now let's define who those people are. Let's say we have 100 clients. Who are our top 10 clients? If I could eliminate 90 clients and clone those 10 so that I had 100 again, who would be the 10 I would clone? It's an interesting way to think about things because it's not always, well, these are our top revenue generators. A lot of times it's like, what do we do best as a business? Who do we work best with? What is going to be our longevity play? Who are we going to be able to work with on an ongoing basis? All of those components. So in figuring out who your audience is as an existing business, the trick is look back and start there and just say, these are the people that we think we can serve. You may look at your client base and go, we are not serving anyone we want to be serving. Or you may be starting a new campaign where you want to expand your reach and work with a bigger audience. So you may say, who are we not working with right now? Who's the group of people that we're not able to make contact with, make a connection with? So going through that list, just like I said, it could be a sentence, just understanding like who they are. Then when you dive in and you actually jump into who the audience journey is, understanding their audience journey roadmap, like their roadmap, where they're going to be going, awareness, analysis, action, adoption, advocacy, of course. What I like to do, though, is say, where do we struggle as a business? So understanding where you struggle as a business. No one has ever heard of us. You have an awareness problem. We have this whole entire client base that we're trying to upsell on an existing service, and they just don't know about the service. We have an awareness problem, right? They know about us, but we're losing. We keep losing to the competition. We keep losing to just people not taking a step. They're struggling with analysis. They're struggling figuring out who we are and making that decision. We get into the step, and then they get through it, but then they just literally can't take the next step. They can't swipe a credit card. They can't make a purchase. They can't do what they need to do. They don't know how to do what they need to do. They don't know what that next step is. They have an action problem. We get them through, but we're losing people after they've swiped their credit card with us, figuratively or literally. We're struggling because our delivery problem, we have delivery problems figuring those things out, right? And then, you know what? We have these clients and they absolutely love us, and we never do anything about it. We really haven't figured out how to have them help us advocate. So we're struggling with the advocacy. We're struggling with people figuring that out, or we're really not reliable. Maybe we're not doing a good enough job that they would want to. So understanding in your audience's journey where you're having a misconnection with them will also help you understand in your marketing roadmap the point where you need to put the biggest amount of energy. So that's where your audience is. But now let's say, okay, we're actually going to dive in. We understand who that audience is. We understand where we're making connection. So now we want to get into how do we figure out who that audience is in more than just a sentence? How do we figure out who they really are? And there's really two major ways that we talk about doing that. Number one is your customer persona building. So understanding in your customer persona, this is the three major characteristics we would talk about would be their demographics, their geographics, and their psychographics. Demographics meaning the factors about them that are important, the things you need to understand about them that are relative to them. I sell Barbie dolls, right? Well, who are my demographics for Barbie dolls? Well, I'm going to understand that a 7-year-old girl like my daughter loves Barbie dolls. Well, who else loves Barbie dolls? Because we just had a major motion picture, a huge blockbuster, sold, $1 billion worth of tickets, right? It couldn't have just been 7-year-old girls seeing it. So Barbie, understanding their audience and understanding the demographics of their audience, that expands much more than just 7-year-old girls, right? It's a bigger brand. It's more important than that.
Right. You've got nostalgic millennials, nostalgic Gen X.
Nostalgic boomers. I mean, everybody,
Yep.
right? So you've got a lot more people that are going to be looking into Barbie than that, right? So understanding their demographics, understanding age, understanding gender, understanding those characteristics of them that are going to help you target in better is understanding those demographics. Now let's look at the geographics. Where is your audience located? So if you have a magical chocolate factory, it is a worldwide competition you're running to bring people from all over the globe to come to your chocolate factory, right? If you are a lemonade stand, you don't need to market yourself around the world. You just need to market yourself to the cars that drive by, right? So geographics of your audience is very important when you're trying to figure out who that audience is. And then that last part is the psychographics. And I like to think of psychographics with their values and understanding the values that they have and the way they think and the way they react and the way they embrace the marketplace, understanding those things, which leads into value proposition design, which is the art of figuring out what those values are with your audience and then understanding how you create value propositions that reach that audience's values. And so you can connect with their psychographics and actually marry those two things together.
And I think it's important to note that that value prop design you're talking about, it may reveal to you that there's a greater potential audience out there. However, you wouldn't want to necessarily design that value proposition in a way that would alienate your core audience. Yeah. So, serve that main audience primarily.
Well, and it's a good example you say there, because if your goal is to sell Barbie dolls, focusing on the end user, the child who would be playing with them, that would ask for the Barbie dolls, focusing on the parent who would be buying them, the family member or the friend who would be buying them, the grandparent who would be buying them, that's who Barbie would want to focus on. And so understanding that audience and making those differentiations is important, because there would be a lot of wasted time if you went after Sid from Toy Story, because Sid will not buy, he probably is not going to buy a single Barbie. He's just using the Barbie dolls that he's stealing from his little sister and his neighbors.
And that's part of the appeal for Sid, no doubt. So the customer persona building, the value proposition design, these are foundational to the next step.
So one thing I want to say about value proposition design is, in getting into value proposition design, there are really three major components and two different sides. So on this side of the table is the audience themselves, right? And they have three things that they've got going on. And when you think about it, the first thing is the jobs that they need to do. These are the things that must be done for them to fulfill their role. So when we're talking about a B2B business, what they're going to need to do is their jobs. A lot of times it's your job, like what you need to do for a job. So for us right now, we're using an awesome platform called Descript, and Squadcast is particularly the way that we're recording it. You and I need to record a podcast, right? So that's one of our jobs. We want to record our podcast. So we're using Squadcast to get the job done, right? So we have a job. We need to record a podcast. We would like to have it where we've got different tracks that we can use so we can edit between us. We want something that makes us look good. We want something that makes us sound good. Those are gains for us, right? So it would be better for us to work if we had discrete audio tracks and discrete video tracks, right? And then a real pain is, if we're trying to record over Zoom, we don't get those separate tracks, but more if you have a bad internet connection or I have a bad internet connection, it's just not going to get recorded. That's a pain, right? So it's a pain point for us. So we have jobs, gains, and pains. Those are the three components. Now, on this side of the table with that fittedness is our value propositions. So Squadcast value proposition would then be they're trying to sell to us. So Squadcast says, okay, you have this job that you need to do, record a podcast. We do that. You have this gain that you would like to reach, which is you have everything recorded separately, so you can do editing and you can do everything you want to do. We record everything separately into different channels. Every guest has their own recording. And then we go, okay, well, we have this real pain point where, oh my gosh, people's internet can be bad and we can lose that. Well, guess what? We record locally on their computer and then we upload those files when they're done. So even if you lose internet connection in the middle, you still have all your recording files as best as they can be done for each person. So we had 3 points there, our jobs, our gains, and our pains. And over here they had services, which meet those jobs. They have gain creators, and then they have pain relievers, right? So creating the fittedness between our values and their value propositions and bringing those things together is how that's done with value proposition design. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Strategizer. Strategizer developed value proposition design. That's what I follow, capital V, capital P, and capital D. That's the methodology I use. And I highly recommend for anybody that wants to get real nerdy about it, dive into their book, Value Proposition Design. It's a fantastic book and a really great way to think about the psychographics of your audience so that you can best meet them.
In many ways, it's about breaking down what you kind of already know in your gut, but defining it in a way that will help you then build a brand, create content, and then manage those customer relationships.
And I'll take it a step further. Documenting all of the things that you have in your gut will often show you the things you didn't really think about. So if we get into the Barbie analogy again and we say, gosh, it's like there really is a whole secondary market for Barbie that we haven't really been thinking about because we said, oh, we have these nostalgic boomers, right, who are like played with Barbie as kids. Well, if we offer a product to them as a collector's item, it's not really a playing item. It's actually a collector's item designed just for them. That's something they may be more interested in buying, right? And so the gut feeling plus documentation can often help you understand. It's like, well, we have this whole audience that we really haven't been serving because we've been treating it like a product for little girls. We make this movie, and the movie makes $1 billion, and then we have all the merchandising for the movie, but can we take it where we add another audience, which is we're picking up that audience of viewers and giving them a product? So those are things that you can do because you document it. You can get past your gut and get to even more value.
Well, if we're going to get into brand next, do you want to talk at all about the everlasting gobstopper? I mean, is that a worthwhile
I could talk
discussion?
Forever about the everlasting gobstopper. But getting into brand, I do think it's good to think about, so the Willy Wonka brand, right? So like you understand that it's this global brand that's all around the world. But what's it called? It's called the Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory. And while on the smokestack, it has a big sign. The sign is Willy Wonka. The 1977, I believe, version of the film decided to rename it. Do you know why they decided to rename the film?
I don't know why.
So the book's called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but they named the film Willy Wonka. Why? Do you know who funded the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Oh, would it be Nestle or the holding
General
company
Mills.
for
General Mills
okay.
wanted to launch a chocolate brand that could compete with
so
Hershey.
this is marketing in the real world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really is.
Yes. So the movie existed because General Mills was like, we want to launch a candy brand. And so because we want to launch this candy brand, we're going to use this existing property and we're going to license it. And so we're going to pay for this book to be turned into a movie. And that's what happened. That's why the movie exists, is because. So when you watch the very beginning of the movie, if anybody doesn't remember this, I feel bad for you. The very beginning credits of the movie are just chocolates being made. And it's fantastic, right? You're just literally watching.
I've added that to our video podcast right here, by the way.
Oh, good. But that's the very beginning of it, right? Why? Because they were selling, okay? So the brand, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because in the story, though, the brand is not just the chocolates. The brand is the Candyman. The brand is Willy Wonka, right? So he's the brand. So what does it mean for this whole entire story for them to understand the brand? Well, Gene Wilder, and again, this is a podcast, so you guys are in for this. I know way too much about this movie. Gene Wilder, in his development of the character, he had a couple of demands for the way he wanted Willy Wonka to play. And so one of them, which is one of the most memorable scenes in the movie, is the first time we ever see the man, Willy Wonka. He walks out with a cane on a brick road, a brick-lined path out of the building. And he walks out with a cane, and everybody cheers, but then everybody's really quiet because he walks very slowly, and he seems very decrepit. Then his cane gets stuck, and he keeps walking past the cane, and now he doesn't have his cane. And he falls down and turns it into a somersault and flips up with a flourish, and he stands up. And you realize he didn't need the cane in the first place, that the whole thing was just a way to excite the crowd and surprise them. Well, Gene Wilder said that was actually his idea to include that scene. And the reason why Gene Wilder said it was he goes, I want the audience to never know if Willy Wonka is a good guy or a bad guy till the very end. I want them to question who Willy Wonka is, right? So even Gene Wilder in the making of this film was thinking, I need to consider the brand, right? So now let's go to the bigger question, right? So what is your brand? Your brand is the way you're perceived by that audience. And really, I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You have 8 billion brands. So what does it mean for you to cultivate and shape that brand? Well, that's what branding is. Branding is you actually taking the necessary steps to shape that brand. So in the making of the movie, Gene Wilder shapes the brand of Willy Wonka. But in the inside of the movie, the Wonka brand, they build the entire candy company all around this character that is Willy Wonka. And he has legend to him, and he has stories that they do share and stories that they don't share. And they have logos. He wears a purple suit. There's all these things that they use to develop the brand of Willy Wonka, because those are all branding. Those are steps that they can take to cultivate and shape the impression of that person around the world. And that was a way that they shaped that brand. And so what do we call that? Well, we call it branding. So your brand is your perception by the 8 billion people in the world. Your branding are the steps you take as an organization to shape that brand. So where does that come down to? Well, the name of your business, the logo of your business, the design of the way you present yourself. There's other components of branding. There's your brand voice, how you sound, how you actually, when you write, what voice do you write in? Do you always sound clever and witty? Do you always sound straightforward? Do you sound very formal? Do you sound very informal? Asking questions like, do you use emojis in your post, or do you not like emojis? Or do you use some emojis and not many? These are all components of the voice of the brand. And Nick, you understand this because you work a lot with clients on their voice. Talk to me a little bit about how that comes through when you're actually implementing the brand into their collateral. What does that look like? How do you go about that process for a client?
It just all has to make sense. There has to be harmony with what they're doing. So, for instance, if someone offers a product or service like healthcare, you want that tone and voice to be confident, to be welcoming, to be knowledgeable. You have to consider what the audience is looking for in a given service. And so, yeah, if I'm looking to buy candy from a magical chocolate creator, something like Everlasting Gobstoppers is a great brand because this thing lasts forever and stops my gob. I mean, that's appealing to me.
Yeah, well, and I think also the most disappointing thing for every actual child in the world is that they watch the movie and then they buy Gobstoppers, Everlasting Gobstoppers, yes. And they're not
and
everlasting.
They don't last.
They don't.
Exactly.
And I don't know. I've been disappointed for years, so.
Yeah, but developing that tone and voice, it really goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where you're understanding what people are expecting and what they're looking for, and then you're also wanting to be authentic on some level, because if you're not speaking from some place that's true to what you do and how you do it, people can sniff that out, and that can create some problems for you. The brand is a major way for you to reach out and connect with your customers. So that kind of leads me to thinking about the customer relationship. And the customer relationship is two ways. It's a relationship. Like you said on our last episode, it's built on communication. And so what does your brand communicate? What are people expecting from your brand? And then how are you capturing feedback from your audience? How do you know that that brand is connecting in the first place? And that's about customer relationship management.
Yeah, and I think customer relationship management, CRM, as we'll call it, for a system, but that fits into a bigger piece on your marketing roadmap. And that marketing roadmap is what we call your owned platforms. So your owned platforms are the things that when you change them, they change. When you don't change them, they don't change. That's your own platform. It's your own sandbox. And so what are the two major components of that? Well, number one would be your CRM system. So the repository in which you capture the client relationships, the way you capture that. If you were a nonprofit, it might be your donor relationship management platform. If you're working with hiring, you may use, talent platforms. Like it's not always called a CRM, but ultimately it's that piece where you're actually databasing all that information, you're storing all that information, your lists, your groups, and you're keeping it all in one spot. And then comes in your website. That's the other piece of your own platform. And a lot of people, when they think about their website, don't really consider it for what it is. It's the place online that you control. No matter what, once people get to your website, you can make it shaped the way you want to shape it. And so because of that and the amount of technologies that you can connect to your website ends up being a center point of your entire marketing plan and your marketing roadmap. It's often the first impression for your brand. It's often the place that people find you. It's often the place they can experience the most of you. So your website as an owned platform is very important to your marketing journey and is a place that facilitates the action steps you're going to be taking.
But how do we actually do that? So you actually have to have some tools in the toolbox to do this stuff. And for me, that's where content fits in. And content is strategy and it's stuff. You're creating written content, you're creating video content, you're creating pathways to communicate to your audience, and you're doing so with a strategy that fits into this marketing roadmap. So how do you use your owned platforms to deploy content? How do you develop content? And then we can talk about organic and paid after that too.
Absolutely. So your own platform for content, it is the place where your content can live in any way, shape, or form you want. So being able to provide the blog version of it, being able to provide video to your clients. This podcast lives on a website as show notes, and you can listen to it there, right? So all those things, they all filter into your own platform. So your own platform is a place where your content can live. But that early stage content, the static content that doesn't change all the time, unlike your blogs, unlike relative content that's going to be changing on a regular basis, offers you're providing, etc., those are changing all the time. But your static content, your about us, your way that you describe the business, your locations, like how people find your business, your services, listing out what you do, all of those things are on your website. And it's the best place for people to find out who you are and really do that deeper analysis of what you got going on. So that's where that content can live. And a lot of times that content that's on your website is what's going to usher them into a clear call to action with complete control over the call to action on your website, because you can build any funnel you want. You're not stuck with the only call to action options that other non-owned platforms provide for you. You can actually build the funnel that you want to build on your website and build it through so that people can take that action step and make that conversion.
I'd love to provide a link for our listeners, our watchers, to take a look at our marketing roadmap graphic just to have a better understanding, or if you wanted to follow along with some of these concepts, because I think about the alternative approach, not having it figured out in this kind of strategic way, which would be, well, I guess I got to run some ads. I guess I should do a blog. I don't know. I heard about blogs. Compare that to the approach of using a marketing roadmap and fitting things in where they need to fit and making sure that they actually serve your overall strategy.
Yeah. If you say, hey, I want more clients, I'm going to make a blog. And when you look at the marketing roadmap, no one's ever heard of you. Guess what? Your blog is not the way to get there, right? Now, you may say, well, gosh, I'm going to do an organic blog that's going to allow for better search engine presence, and our clients have strong search intent. That would help you make the decision because you're still at an awareness level, right? Or the opposite. Gosh, we've got tons of traffic, tons of customers already. Let's go run an ad. And you're like, why? You don't need to run an ad. You have awareness. You have people that are paying attention to your brand and paying attention to your offer already. So you don't need to advertise it. You don't even, and there's no intent out there. Like, you may just create content and then using the channels, using your distribution channels that you already own and already take care of, you may provide them with that information through those. So understanding the marketing roadmap also helps you make better decisions about the types of marketing that you can take and the steps you're going to take when you're trying to reach your audience.
You talked about your owned platforms, obviously those including your website. The sign out front is an older example of an owned platform. But we also talk about organic versus paid, and it's really not versus, it's more like and. So tell me about how organic content and paid platform content are different and how they work together.
Right. So you're building out this amazing content, and then you put it on a hard drive and you never do anything with it, right? Maybe you put it up on your website and you get the value of when people visit your website. But the problem is nobody's coming to your website. Why? Your owned platform is your sandbox. It's the thing you own, right? If no one comes to your sandbox, it doesn't matter what you have in there. You can have the best toys in the world. Nobody's showing up. So the organic platforms and the paid platforms, those are other people's sandboxes. And so organic platforms are the places where you can bring traffic to your business in other people's sandbox. So what does that mean? So think of search engine, Google, Bing, whatever people use these days. I assume that. But there's also the idea that people are going to be searching for you now through AI, through Claude, through ChatGPT, etc. So there are ways that you're going to be showing up, but those are search engines, ways that people are looking for things like you. They can find you through them, right? Then there is also social media. So social media is where many people are playing. They're in that sandbox every day. It's where they spend their time. So how do you reach your audience there through social media management and actually show up in that sandbox? And then there's another one, is email marketing. There's another place where it's a sandbox. No one owns email. Everybody has their own inbox. The way the technology works is very strange, and it is what it is. But it's still a prime way of creating awareness and reaching people is email. So email marketing, how do you manage that email and how do you actually get out to people? So those are organic platforms. They're not pay to play. They're places where you're getting out there and you're creating content that reaches them. Search engine optimization, you're doing it on your website. You're managing your Google business profile. You're managing your profile on Bing, on Apple Maps, etc. You're going to be actually managing that, right? Social media management, you're creating content that's going on to this platform. And email marketing, you're actually creating those emails and distributing to your audience and getting them out to lists that you've captured and created. So then it gets into the paid platforms. So that differentiation is now you're going to start sliding your credit card and you're going to start reaching people. So search engine, you're getting right to the front of the line. You're creating ads that are getting to the top of Google. You're creating ads that are showing up in the map before the organic searches, right? So those are pay-to-play platforms. Then you have social media marketing. Those are ads that are running on social media, or you're working with influencers and paying influencers, or you're doing branded content, you're doing partnerships, but you're paying money, right? And then you get into these deeper sales funnels of like, how do you manage those sales through paid marketing channels? So how do those two things make a difference? Well, paid is fast marketing. It's fast and it's short-term marketing. Not that you wouldn't be running paid for a long time, but your ads are only live when they're live and then they're down, right? Organic is longer term and slower marketing. So when you're doing organic platforms, it's going to take you longer to get results, but your content and what you post on organic channels will last longer. Even email can sit in somebody's inbox for a while, right? So there is the difference between paid is fast, but paid is short. Organic is slower, and organic is longer term. And which one should you use? It very much depends on where your buyer's intent is. It depends on what stage you are in your business and where you want to engage and what your pipeline looks like. Those are all going to be differentiators that help you decide that when building awareness, am I going to go to the paid platforms or am I going to use the organic platforms to build that awareness?
I'm glad you mentioned stages of business because some businesses might have this luxury where they develop a marketing roadmap and it just really works for them. It's really a good fit and they can stick with it. They'll still have to make changes as technology advances and as their audience moves around and ways to find them adapt and change. But I would say that most businesses have to revisit this. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Not only do you need to be revisiting your marketing roadmap, you need to be understanding your audience journey on a regular basis and understanding where your audience is living, what's changed. Has your audience completely moved and disappeared? Should you be focusing on a new audience? So in the same way that you need to be treating them like a living organism, because they are, you need to be treating your marketing roadmap as a way to reflect the changes that happen in your audience and understand that when you want to increase the impact that you're making with your audience and actually get them further down that journey towards advocacy, having your marketing roadmap as regularly something that you address is very important. Now, paid marketing you'd be doing, you're going to be looking at that every day. You're going to be looking at those ads. Yes. You're going to be creating campaigns. Your audience, you're not necessarily going to be changing that very often. As a business, you might be finding new audiences, but you're really not changing that, right? Your brand doesn't change as frequently. Your website changes more frequently than your brand, but less frequently than your content. And so as you go down the marketing roadmap, the further you get down the roadmap, the more change and the more frequency of change you're going to be experiencing. And the earlier on the marketing roadmap you are, the less change you're going to be seeing on a regular basis.
Because we're running out of time here, I'm just going to spoil the ending, which is just get started.
Yes, just get started. And for all of these things, at any step of the way, just do the thing. Start working on them. Don't wait. Because if you wait, you're just losing that audience that you could have been interacting with as a business. And the worry that you have around, gosh, is it going to be perfect? Is it going to be exactly what I need? I can guarantee you not doing anything is not going to grow your business. But what I want to do now is I want us to start teaching people these components and where they can get started. I want to dive into that because like you said, it's just get started. I mean, yeah, that's the answer is just get started. How do you really do value proposition design? We need to spend some time really talking through that and helping people understand that, giving them resources. So where I see this going and where I think me and you really are going to find a lot of fun is to start teaching people the things that we just sort of treat as assumed that this is, if you wanted to start launch a social media channel, this is what you would do. But we're going to help people figure those things out. And I think that we ought to do a series where we talk about each of those pieces and give people more of a deep dive into how do they get started. If they were going to, if they wanted to start out in their business, they're going, gosh, I literally don't even know where to start. We'll go, okay, well, we know one thing, audience first, let's go. And so we teach them how to do that. So I think that's where we go next. And so what are we going to do next week? Well, let's see. But I think that the audience should get excited about truly getting not the 101 version of everything. This is more like, how do I sign up for class version of everything to get started? And then we'll go as deep as we want, and they'll have the 201, 301, 401 version, but they'll also know what it takes to write their name at the top of the test.
That's exciting. I like that. Our theme for the next time we get to talk is basically the conclusion of this discussion, which is, okay, we've laid the groundwork. We've talked about the audience journey and the marketing roadmap. Now what?
Now get started. Let's go.
Just get started. So let's end by saying just get started. And Brian, this has been
the Roundtable Marketing
Marketing Podcast, where people who make marketing and people who buy marketing stick their heads together and figure some stuff out. Yeah, I'm changing it every time.
Clunk them together. You can figure it out.
Yeah. All right, Brian, it's been awesome. Talk to you next time.